In this episode, I look back on the last year using the X-T3, reflect on how 12 months have gone by just like that, and try not to break into tears. Let's get it started. Good morning everyone, Gajan here, and if you haven't already, I've been saying it for months now, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and you're probably wondering why, especially if you're new to the channel. Well, here you'll find a ton of content around Fuji gear, Fuji photography, but also behind the scenes, how I get the shot, as well as some software workflows, and a ton of travel. It's something that I really enjoy doing and sharing with you guys as well. So if that sounds interesting to you, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, but enough about that. Let's talk about this X-T3. Announced last year, this was one of the most anticipated releases from Fujifilm. I've been using the Fuji since 2017. My first camera was the Fuji X-T2. It was something that really brought me into the mirrorless system. Up until that point, I was a Nikon shooter. I started with the D90, moved up to the D7000, and eventually to full frame with the D800. And spending years in that space, I didn't think that mirrorless could really hold a candle to what the DSLRs of that time were doing, especially with full frame DSLRs. But the X-T2 was interesting. There's a lot of noise happening around the mirrorless space, and it seemed like Fuji and Sony were really leading that charge. So I decided to make a test. I went out, bought an X-T2, and instantly fell in love. The first lens I got was a 23mm f2, followed by the 56mm f1.2, and well, then the floodgates just burst open. It's been a ton of fun just playing in this Fuji ecosystem. It speaks to the type of photography that I find most interesting: portrait work, street, and travel. So I got the X-T2 middle of 2017, and then the X-H1 was announced about half a year later, but then came the X-T3, and listen, I'll admit it, a little bit of a gear acquisition syndrome set in, and the X-T3 really spoke to the type of content that I wanted to capture. The improved processor, the upgraded sensor, the advancements in autofocus, and truth be told, a little bit of that classic styling that the silver X-T3 has. Well, weighing out the options, I decided to jump in headfirst to that X-T3, go back to this style of camera, and it's been a ton of fun. Now, this isn't going to be the typical review I do on this channel. If you want to see the X-T3 review, I've done that already. It's on the channel, and I'll put up a link in the description. I've also done a preview with this before the camera was launched and took this thing to a racetrack and in a helicopter. Tons of fun. This one is more of this retrospective review. What's it like to own an X-T3 for a year, use it for so long, and capture a ton of content and all over the world? How is it holding up? Well, I'm gonna answer a few of those questions in this video. First, let's talk about the body, the design, and how this thing has held up. As you guys may know already, the camera is dust, weather, and freeze resistant. Taking this thing across Canada and all over the world, I think I took it on 24 flights this year, and like the title suggests, over 4 terabytes of content captured indoors, outdoors, fluctuating temperatures, sometimes in high heat, sometimes in really cold situations. The body held up really well. Now, if you look at some of the corners, the paint is starting to scrape off a bit, but for the most part, you wouldn't notice it if I didn't point it out to you. It still has a really clean finish to it. The rubberized texture around this camera hasn't started peeling. There's no signs of advanced wearing on this. It's holding up really, really well. And I haven't noticed a loss in grip or gripability, is that even a word, in this camera in all the months that I've been shooting with it. All the dials, all the buttons, they've been functioning fine. I haven't had an issue, and holding this up to a brand new X-T3, I don't see any difference between the one I've been using and a brand new one. Now, I will say a lot of this video is anecdotal. Well, any of these reviews are anecdotal, but I'm just offering this as still my experience in the demanding environments that I use it in as evidence, and maybe an argument for someone that's looking to make a purchase of the X-T3 in 2019 or 2020. I mentioned it in previous videos and even in the review of this camera that the analog styling, having the physical dials there just brings you closer to the photograph, and that hasn't changed. I got to use a lot of cameras over the last year for the professional work that I do, whether it's the new Sony cameras, the new Panasonic cameras, the new Olympus cameras, the new, well, is there anyone else making cameras? Oh yes, of course, Nikon, Canon, all that kind of stuff. And for me personally, I just enjoy having these classic analog dials. Being able to tweak them, set them, and have that physical indication of where they're at speaks more to the style of photography that I enjoy doing. And really, this is gonna be preference. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that one is clearly better than the other. But I will say though, using this camera and showing it to other people and other people that are just getting started with mirrorless photography, once they start to see how this works and seeing that physical representation of the exposure triangle, what I noticed as, I guess you could say, a teacher in that scenario is that the lessons are picked up faster and the understanding of photography is ingrained a little bit deeper. Again, your mileage may vary because different people learn differently, but I will say that having the physical dials there may be beneficial to how well you pick up photography and advance your skills. Now, you're seeing a lot of pictures coming up, and I'm gonna get into the photography aspect of it and what that has been for me personally, but I wanna talk about being a Fuji user. This camera has been on the market for a little over 12 months now, and it's on version 3 of the firmware. This is something that you just don't see in many cameras on the market. Within a year, Fuji has released multiple firmware updates and 2 additional major updates, whether it's upgrades to the video functionality and hybrid log gamma shooting, or advancements in autofocus and making it even better than it was when it shipped out of the box. That's the crazy thing about a camera like this, and I'm not gonna shut up about it. The simple fact that you can invest your hard-earned dollars into a product like this, and a year later, it is potentially, again, depending on how you treat it, but let's just say that you treat it well enough that it's in working order, it is actually better than the day you got it. It performs better than the specs that were announced with the camera when it launched. That's something that is really not done enough in the digital imaging space, and something that I can't stop giving them credit for. Even with the recently announced Fuji X-Pro3, there's a ton of software features that have been announced with that, and because this X-T3 uses the same processor as that X-Pro3, I'd venture to argue that Fuji is going to release a lot of those software updates for X-T3 owners, such as a brand new film simulation, such as advancements in bracketing options and focus stacking, such as further advancements in autofocus, including low light autofocus. This is, again, a huge reason why it's worth investing in a product like this. And listen, if you've been following this channel for years now, I never make the decision for you. I'm not telling you to go buy an X-T3. I simply use it for an extended period of time, take these things on photo shoots, use it how I would use it, and give you my opinion and what I think about it, what I like and what I don't like. And I'll just say it again, I really like the fact that I can invest in a camera and 12 months later, it is a better product, undoubtedly, than the product that I bought initially. Let's talk about what it's like to capture the content over the last year. It's been kind of life-changing. Shooting on Fuji, because of how it renders colors, because of the film simulations and the custom profiles, I find myself shooting RAW plus JPEG. RAW files going to one card, JPEGs going to another card. And the benefit of that is that I can start to create a recipe to what I want my images to look like at the end. So the RAW file is there and it's gonna go to Capture One where I process my images, but I can have a JPEG in the moment that gives me a little bit of a head start. And in many cases, especially when it's not for professional work, I find myself just loving the JPEG where I send that to my phone, crop it, and share it to everyone. This is something that I just didn't do before, not with any other camera system. With the Fuji X-T3 and their film simulations, I found myself wanting to be creative and create my own look. And this is something that's empowered by the way they have it set up. The menu system isn't intimidating, and the process of setting up your custom profiles couldn't be easier. And in doing so, if you venture down this path, you could quite literally create your own style in camera and really get that immediate feedback that pushes you to keep shooting. And that's really what it is. And maybe it's hard to explain, so I'll try it one more time. When you take a picture and it looks really close to the final product, and you get that exposure right, you get the composition right, that little jolt of positive reinforcement just encourages you to keep shooting. And that's the magic of the Fuji X-T3, is that it encourages you to keep shooting. And even further than that, imagine you have a model in front of you or someone on the street you captured candidly. When you can go and show them an image that you yourself are pretty happy with, that you don't feel like you need to go and process and add a bunch of styles or presets to get to the final side. When you have something in that moment that still looks really good, and you show someone and you see their eyes light up and them smile and them almost dumbstruck by how well these images look right out of the camera, those bits of positive reinforcement just keep pushing you further down this journey in creating content and taking pictures. Again, it's something that's really hard to explain. I can talk about it on and on and on, but it's not until you actually experience it and try it that you truly understand what that feeling is like. And listen, I know, if you're on Canon, Sony, Nikon, Olympus, whatever it is, you'll say, I get great pictures in camera with those products as well. I'm not saying you won't. I'm just saying for me, for myself, I've found that this process and this immediate feedback, the flexibility, the latitude, and the simple innovations around these film simulations have given me that more than I experienced on any other camera platform. Just my opinion. And it doesn't stop there. The video functionality of this camera is truly, even at the end of 2019, something that is top tier in the market. There are still few cameras that shoot 4K 60. There are still few cameras that can deliver 422 10-bit out video for those of you that are really into that kind of stuff. It's something that packs a lot of punch, and again, in a product that isn't really big. The footprint is actually really small and very portable. So to get that kind of functionality in a product like this, it's still really unique at the end of 2019. So using this for a little over a year right now, what are some things that I wish could have been done better? Well, the eye relief on this camera, initially I thought it was great, but I wish that it was actually a little bit more, just to make it a little bit more comfortable when holding this up to your face. I find myself activating the touchscreen often, and with that, it does get annoying when you're trying to land focus. So sometimes I find myself having to turn off autofocus and then having to turn it back on. It's just a really cumbersome thing. And you know, not everyone is gonna experience this, and if you shoot it with a little bit of an angle and you don't have a big nose, you might not have that issue. Just for me, I find that to be a little bit annoying. While the rolling shutter has been reduced, and that's that jelly effect you get sometimes with cameras when using electronic shutter, while in electronic shutter it has been reduced for this camera, it's still present. So in those times where I really need high frame rates, again, being able to go 30 frames per second, blackout free with only a 1.25 crop, in those times where I want to use that, there's still a little bit of rolling shutter present. So your mileage may vary if you're in really fast environments. Luckily, I'm not always there, so again, minor issue. And it wasn't until I actually handled more camera bodies throughout the year, and especially getting to try out an early version of the X Pro 3, that I wish the grip was a little bit better on the X-T3. Now, most of the time I do have a vertical grip on this with 2 extra batteries just because of the shooting that I find myself doing, whether it's in the studio tethered or recording video. But every now and then when I'm traveling or just shooting for fun, I take that grip off and I quickly realize how light that grip is, and I have to kind of awkwardly adjust to hold this camera in my hand. It may not be a problem for everyone, but I just wish that there was a couple of more millimeters or quarter of an inch, depending on where you find yourself in the world, on that grip to angle it a little bit better so it fits even more comfortably in the hand. So is the X-T3 my dream camera? Probably. I've been shooting so much with this thing, and over the last year, well over 4 terabytes of content. I've probably captured more with this camera than in the last few years of being a Nikon user. And it's not just that, the camera encourages me to keep going, to keep shooting, to keep creating. The feedback that I get, not just from myself, but from others, pushes me to go further and further and create more content with this thing. But I'm not gonna go ahead and say this camera is perfect. No camera is perfect. It's really coming down to your preferences and what you enjoy. And this camera specifically is missing some features that people like to mention often, like built-in image stabilization. I mean, at this point, Fuji, can you just release some digital image stabilization? Something. For the type of photographer that travels often, that enjoys street photography, that enjoys portrait work, and listen, I'm just mentioning those, but there's a ton of other stuff you can use this for. This is a fantastic product. This is a product that's gonna encourage you to keep producing content, and something that you will not be disappointed in for the most part. Again, only you can answer that question. I sound like Smokey the Bear here, but really it comes down to you picking one up, test driving it, and seeing if it fits your style. For me personally, it ticks pretty much every single box. As a hybrid solution, both for photography and video, this is as close to perfect for me as possible. I have yet to find a situation where this could not keep up with me. Being able to push it and try to get the result that I'm looking for, it constantly delivers. I have to say, this is probably one of the best investments in mirrorless that someone can make in 2019, and I'd venture to argue, maybe even in 2020. But let me end the video on this. Is this my perfect camera for photography? I don't know, because we have the brand new Fuji X Pro 3 on the horizon, and for me, that may be the perfect photography camera. We'll see. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you know when a new video comes out. But more importantly, please let me know your thoughts below. I want to interact with you. I want to hear what you think. So please do leave a comment and let's chat there. Again, this is Gajan, and I'll see you next time.